Steve Cooper here with a new podcast, and this one is about, I've called it Coaching for Coppers, and it is a blog about coaching, what it is, what it isn't, and how it can help you if you choose to use it as part of your preparation for a promotion selection process, some of the benefits of doing that, to share with you some insights about coaching, about the way I coach, some of the ways in which people are able to help themselves, and some of the ways to think about approaching a selection process that are perhaps you hadn't considered, or you need to perhaps listen to something like this just to pick up some insights to inform your approach towards promotion. So just a reminder that if you do hear creaking, etc., I'm not getting on a bit really, I shouldn't say that, but I'm sat on a small boat on the south coast. The wind's blowing, you can probably hear it whistling just round the cabin, and you may hear seagulls. Occasionally they'll land on the roof and make themselves known, but also the sound of cables clinking on yacht masts and some dim and distant voices in the background. So just to kind of set the scene, that's where I am, it's where I relax, it's where I chill out, and so there may well be some occasional additional noises you hear, so I'm just kind of hope they add to the atmosphere for you. Okay, so coaching for coppers then, coaching for cops, coaching for police officers, and just spending some time to share some food for thought with you, just in case you didn't know what coaching was. And I'm expecting some of you sat there may well have done level 3, maybe level 5 coaching qualifications. Coaching is one of the skills that's been increasingly used in policing now, and there are lots and lots of descriptions for coaching, lots of perceptions around coaching, and also it's fair to say a lot of skepticism around coaching. So if you look at some of my testimonials from people who have come and then been successful, I think one of them's a guy, Steve, I think is. There's a few Steves in my testimonials, but one of them just says, look, I was really sceptical before I came to coaching. And when we unravelled that and unwrapped that, he didn't have a clue what coaching was. He thought about it in football terms, which is not a bad thing, because coaching is helping people to learn. It's maximising their potential. So there's nothing wrong with thinking about coaching, but that's a common thing that people often think about coaches in a sporting context. I quite like the description of coaches as a thinking partner, because I think that's very much what I do, the role that I take, the role that I play, and that is around encouraging, provoking, supporting, challenging, and respectfully, very supportively provoking your thinking to help you move to a position that is match fit or appropriate and relevant to go ahead and perform very well in a promotion selection process, whatever that might look like, and it does look different across different forces at different times, and they do change the processes. But coaching is something that can form part of your CPD and can be very supportive to you in terms of how you approach it, how you think about it, and the decisions you make to progress your career. So where to start, eh? Where to start? So I suppose you want to know what a coach does. So that's a good place to start as any. So what does a coach do? Well, research identifies, there's lots of research about it, you can find it very quickly on coaching, and research has identified that 3/4 of people seek coaching to facilitate a transition to a new role. So outside of policing, across other organisations, people look for some help, some support, some thinking support, as I call it, to help them facilitate their transition to a new role. And that's also relevant to policing. So not just about transitioning from constable to sergeant to inspector, inspector to chief inspector. Sometimes I'm asked to provide transition coaching for newly promoted chief inspectors who have been promoted from inspector. And part of that is around examining and exploring how people might choose to work differently, because you're certainly not going to work the same way and generally it's a rule that, if you keep doing what you've always done in the rank you were in before, without trying different or exploring new ways of working, then you're not going to be performing to the best of your ability. So transition coaching is something that is clearly very popular outside of policing and across organisations, and 3/4 of people seek the coaching to facilitate transition to a new role. It can be quite daunting, certainly when you get those shiny new stripes on your shoulders, and certainly for the first 3, 6, 9, 12 months until you're embedded in there. And you start feeling like they actually feel like they're on your shoulders, and then you start ignoring them and you don't start thinking about them. You don't keep thinking about them all the time, and that's the transition you go through as your courage builds, your skills develop, and you arrive, if you like, in that persona or in that position completely. So making the move from constable to sergeant and from sergeant to inspector are significant role transitions. And whilst the goal of achieving a promotion is clear, the journey to realising that goal is an individual one, and that's where a coach can help. So having made the decision to compete in a promotion process, it can then sometimes be very hard to find meaningful support. And I've been in that position before, a few years back now, but I don't think it's wrong to say that people still struggle to find meaningful support for promotion. So that's why I provide lots and lots and lots of free food for thought. Now, you don't have to come and speak with me, or for me to speak with you, for you to be coached. You can coach yourself. I'm going to cover a bit about what coaching is in a bit, but it's generally asking questions, and you can ask the right questions of yourself. Of course, you can acquire the services of someone else like myself to get you to get to ask questions, or to encourage you to ask the right questions of yourself, and that's how you move towards maximising your potential. But you can also download digital toolkits. I do free YouTube videos, I do free guides, this podcast as food for thought. The point being is at any time you can choose to make the next step. Download a digital toolkit, a full toolkit which comes with a promotion masterclass video of 4 hours and an exclusive insights guide, and really hit the ground running. So really make that commitment to yourself to do the best in the process. So there are lots of different options for you to consider from free, but what does a coach do? Well, the underlying intent of every coach or coaching interaction, if you like, is to build self-belief. And you think, well, these are cops we're dealing with, these are cops we're talking about. Surely they're some of the most confident people out there. And when I talk about some of the language that's used by promotion candidates in confidence to me as a coach, and I share that with you, as I will do in this podcast, you will find out that actually it's okay. You're confident, you go out there on those calls, you deal with members of the public, you're making decisions if you're a sergeant in relation to providing services, managing resources, directing, controlling resources, supervising policing activity, and as an inspector, perhaps across a division, an area, or force-wide. The point being is that, a coach can help with any of those aspects, but you're doing all those things all the time. However, there'll come a point, certainly when you start doing that, or when you're looking to acquire one of those positions, and you aspire to one of those positions, where you're not quite at the right stage of confidence in terms of knowledge and skills and attributes, and you just need a thinking partner as such to discuss those things through with you, so that you can kind of maximise the right things, emphasise the right things, and reflect upon what's valuable in your evidence. Otherwise, you're just talking. So a coach can help pick up some of those aspects and to help build that confidence, so that not only do you feel confident, you talk confident in a process, and it shines through to a promotion panel. So, a quick question: is coaching something that you've considered? Is it in your promotion toolkit? And I've alluded to some of the ways in which you can boost those aspects of your thinking, if you like. So in terms of what coaches do, coaches offer guidance. A trained coach asks questions. Do you need to be trained to ask questions? Well, that all depends what you want. It all depends about the approach you choose for yourself and what you select in terms of the coach you choose. I'm a qualified coach, so I did the Institute of Leadership and Management's Level 7 coaching certificate. So it's the Executive Coaching and Leadership Mentor qualification, so postgraduate qualification. I've done the Level 5 as well. But that's just the theory. That's about learning about how to be a good coach. What I love is the interactions with cops that ring me. Hi, Steve, I've got a promotion process. I know I should have left it this late. I am having a real crisis of confidence here at the moment. It's in 3 or 4 days. It's in the morning, and I just thought I'd ring you. So sometimes that can happen late at night. I'm sat there with a beer. I try to be as accessible as I can within reason, but that's not unusual at all. And by the time we've looked through and talked through or made an arrangement to work through some of the guidance that people have got and some of the experience and examples that people have got, they're in the right ballpark, and they've certainly done some work. It's just about fine-tuning those things and understanding that, people do not walk around in a state of match fitness or readiness to sit down and take part and shine well on a promotion process. So that's where coaches can come in and just help explore some of those issues. So the skillful use of questioning, and there's no secret to any of that, it's just asking open questions. It does help that I'm an ex-cop, and I was an ex-cop for 30 years. I was a former Royal Marine before that. But having been a cop, having been a constable, having been a sergeant, detective sergeant and detective inspector, it does help with the insights, and it does help with asking insightful, meaningful questions. Although that's not completely necessary in the context of coaching. I just find it's very helpful to tap into those experiences, and I find that people do appreciate that credibility, that experience, and being able to talk some of the parlay, some of the jargon in policing, and to understand it. So that's I'm really smiling to myself if you hear me kind of breathing slightly heavier, but because I'm still confused and bemused at how many times police jargon does change. Incidentally, you don't want to be including jargon in your promotion panel, particularly if you've got someone, a lay community member, etc. on the board, because it's not really respectful or the done thing. So that's one of the points we would cover if someone starts talking about using a lot of jargon in their language. I'll say, okay, can we just talk about that for a minute? Is that inclusive? Is that excluding people who may have just been invited in to witness the process, or who form part of your promotion panel? So that's just one tiny point. But skillful use of questioning stimulates and challenges and provokes your thinking, and it's a great place to be when you're doing that, and it helps examine issues from different perspectives, to generate options for action, to deliver results that are sought by yourself and that are required by the organisation. So, a coach asks questions, in short. They offer guidance. As I've said, they're often described, and it's my favourite, as a thinking partner. Asking questions around the role. So a really simple one, what I can ask the questions. What I try and do is encourage you to think that I am the chair of the promotion panel, and I've just asked you the first question on the board. Could you please share with us your understanding of the role that you're going for, whether that's sergeant, inspector or chief inspector? And that's a cruncher. It's an absolute cruncher every single time. Such a simple question, but when people give their first honest best response to that, it can generally we can generally add value to that by alluding to and including some of the functions and dimensions of the role, and how you see those playing out in the current policing context and environment. So asking questions around the role, why you? That's a hard question. Why you? I try not to ask too many questions around why, because but it is useful. It's a critical one for interviews, because every question in an interview is why you? Why are you putting yourself forward for this? Why should anyone be led by you? Why you? It's a good question. One of my favourite questions as a coach is when someone says they want to do something or they would like to do something. I ask, what's stopping you? And that's a really powerful question when you say that to somebody. What's stopping you? And then you just remain silent as a coach. So there's lots of these techniques you can use as a coach that really, what you're doing. You're using these questions skillfully, insightfully, and what you're trying to get the person to do, which is to think through issues. So it's not very much teaching, because I always use the, Socrates, I think it was, who said, I can't teach you anything, I can only make you think. And I love that. I love that quote. I find it really inspiring, and it's what I try to do. I can't teach cops how to do things. It's not what I seek to do as a coach. But using that Socratic approach, if you like, it's very much a questioning approach, getting people to think, making them think through asking questions. I always think, as good coaches should do, of the individuals that I work with and the people that read my products and watch my videos, I'm always thinking of their potential, not their performance. And often people will come to coaching and say, well, I'm not sure I've got the right evidence, I'm not sure I've got the right examples. And they're thinking about their performance. Whereas as a coach, I'm able to look at it and go, but you're saying that really confidently. Let's have a look at what I think you might have. So let's have a look and let's go through some of the competencies and some of the descriptors that can kind of draw out and develop the examples you have got. So I always think of people and my clients, my customers, in terms of their potential, and all of my products are designed from that perspective, So I'm always thinking about your potential, not your performance. And interestingly, that's an approach taken by the College of Policing with fast track candidates. Although they are assessed for fast track, so if you're a constable and you're going for fast track promotion to inspector on the fast track scheme, yes, you'll have to evidence your examples at level 3, which is executive, on the competency and values framework, but they're actually assessing your potential, not wholly your performance. So it's very much an assessment of your potential. So there's a coaching analogy there with that I recognised anyway. It's very much around customising the approach to an individual's needs. So what I do is not, it's not replicating, it's not a kind of sausage making factory approach to individuals. So every person that comes to me doesn't get the same spiel, doesn't get the same conversation. It's very much a bespoke approach to the individual's needs, which of course good coaching should be, because it's very much around listening to understand, not listening to reply. So really listening and being present for somebody helps me to understand their position, their level of confidence, and where they are on their promotion journey, as so to speak. So it's very much around me just supporting as a coach to enhance the skills and resources that you already have. And that's another thing missed by candidates, is they think they're coming to me or coming to a coach, or they need to have everything ready to go with a coach and for a coaching session. And that's not the case, because you already bring certain skills and knowledge and experience, but you may not interpret them or talk about them or share with them or exploit the relevant parts of it that will help your performance on a promotion board. So that's what a coach does, offering guidance, asking questions, thinking of people in terms of their potential and not necessarily their performance, asking targeted questions and helping them to think. So all of that generally has the effect of demystifying the promotion process for people. And when you reflect on that, two of the hardest things to handle in life are success and failure. And that's never more true than when you're talking about coaching and you're talking about the nature and the topic of promotion. Nobody wants to spend all the time preparing for a promotion selection process to fail or to be unsuccessful. But I often coach people who have been through that process, and cops like to fly by the seats of their pants. They like to wing it. They like to have a go. That's part of the culture. Let me have a go first, then I'll see what I did well, what I didn't do well, and what I might be doing differently next time. So people come, and other people just say, no, I want to surf the wave. I want to get on the wave and surf it now and get ahead of the curve. I want to do as much as I possibly can to help myself and to increase my chances and improve the odds of success now. So that's where some people just say, okay, well, I don't care what you've got, Steve, give me the full toolkit, and they download it. But they don't actually say that to me. They just go ahead and do it, because you can do it at any time in policing hours, 24/7, 365. So again, in terms of, if you still skeptical of coaching, or what I'm saying to you isn't resonating, then you may want to kind of work slowly through some products and a video. And some people do that as well, and we have honest conversations. People say to me, I haven't got time to read, Steve. I know what you're talking about reading. I haven't got time. I haven't got time to kind of scratch my nose, so to say, with everything going on in my life. So we have conversations around, prioritising. How do you prioritise? How can you prioritise? Okay, how will you prioritise now? Because we've all got 24 hours in a day, so to say. Okay, so both success and failure feature intrinsically in police promotion processes. So coaching can help individuals, coaching can help you with your preparation and your approach, even if it's just guiding you through what can seem like a misty or murky journey around promotion boards. And some of the products, if you like, some of the benefits, some of the byproducts of coaching that facilitate success include, for those that are aspiring to future promotion, coaching provides a competitive edge. You're already briefed, so to say. It's like somebody's already briefed you before you walk into a board or a selection process. Your brain is saying, hey, I've been here before. I know what it feels like. I haven't got to think about or experience this for the first time. I've actually practiced and rehearsed. And practice and repetition are great learning approaches and methods. So, through an increased self-awareness and improved knowledge, it enhances performance. So, I like to believe and think, and I believe I can evidence through the testimonials that people provide for me, that candidates are simply better prepared. They're more match fit. One of the other benefits, proactive, focused thought. Laser focus is brought to bear on the topic and nature of a promotion interview or selection process. So attention and observation around that is about being on point and informed. Self-belief, self-motivation, commitment, awareness, responsibility. So a coach's job is to build responsibility, to help people to accept their own responsibility to achieve their own goals and to progress their own careers, and to take action. At the end of the day, I'll talk about a model in a minute that you might use in coaching, but at the end of the day, all coaching really is about you taking action. It's never about the coach. It's always about the person being coached. And no coach in the world can do anything without the individual coachee, if you like, taking action. That's what it's all about. Candidates who've had some coaching or awareness, or had a look at my downloadable guides or watched my promotion masterclass, and they're in tune with this, they've got a higher than normal focused attention. It's really focused in, and it leads to higher than normal performance on boards. And you can see that through looking through the testimonials, where people say, I absolutely smashed it. I had great feedback afterwards. The chair of the panel asked me to remain behind and said, how did you prepare? What have you done? Who helped you? How did you get on? And they say what they want to say. The point being is they prepared, and they prepared better than anybody else, and coaching was part of that. So that's how some of the benefits of coaching can work. And many people, when they get through it, how do they feel? Well, as a result of getting through the board, that's brilliant. But often just after a coaching session, they wish they'd done it years ago. I've lost count the amount of people that said that, I wish I'd done this years ago, Steve. Or I should have done this before the last two processes, Steve. And I say, well, what were your reasons for not doing that? I didn't even know anything about it. So that's what this podcast is about, is just to share some insights, some food for thought, to equip you, if you like, with the information you need to make decisions around whether you want to include coaching. So there's many descriptions, as I've alluded to earlier on, for what coaching is. There are some principles that underpin it. So confidentiality. So unless you admit a serious criminal offence, generally coaching and all the services I provide are confidential. So nobody needs to know that you've had any support, any help, any supportive discussions, or that you've got a secret toolkit, which has been described as an unfair advantage. And I couldn't possibly comment, but if I was to step outside myself for a minute, I might agree with that and say, yeah, if you've got a digital toolkit or a promotion masterclass video and you've downloaded it, then you do possess an unfair advantage. I mean, it's difficult to argue against that because it tends to work with people simply because you've got a vast array, significantly more information available than anybody else if they haven't got it. So, and it's a lot smarter. Your time's valuable. Most candidates are time poor, and so they really do appreciate being able to hit the ground running straight away. And I'm zoomed out in terms of having to have had Zoom meetings, team meetings. I like to provide an approach where people can escape that, if you like. So download a video straight away. It's yours. It's yours for 1, 2, 3 promotions to help you, subject to changes, obviously, in promotion selection processes. But once it's yours, it's yours. There's no passwords, there's no logins, there's no registrations. It's just, download it and crack on. So when we talk about what coaching is and the value of it, I like Tim Galway's definition. It's one great definition of coaching. And he says that coaching is unlocking a person's potential to maximise their own performance. It's helping them to learn rather than teaching them. So I quite like that. Helping them to think as well is what I would add. So coaching is unlocking a person's potential. So very much the approach that College of Policing takes when they assess potential for fast track candidates. Now, the Chartered Institute of Personnel and Development, CIPD, they suggest that coaching is developing a person's skills and knowledge so that their job performance improves, hopefully so that organisational objectives are achieved. So that's a kind of narrow work-based focused approach, but of course the bottom line is, you are going for Sergeant, Inspector, Chief Inspector, and the value of that is it helps you to do your job better, and it helps you kind of open up to further information and ideas you might not have considered before. So, some people say coaching generally occurs over a short duration. Well, it can do. I do pretty intensive 2-hour sessions, and that can sometimes transform a person's approach. And you'll see testimonials on my site from people who just say, that 2 hours, Steve, that completely transformed it, unlocked everything for me, and put everything into perspective. Some people just say the penny just dropped. It kind of brings all those things together when I ask some questions and then kind of guide you towards the role, the functions, the dimensions that you're probably already doing, but you're just not expressing it that way. It's just helpful and supportive. So it's helping you to maximise your own performance rather than teaching you anything. So, when people say coaching occurs over a short duration, it can. And it's relatively structured to help you achieve your set goal of getting the next promotion, if you like. So it's bespoke to that. But I also that coaching can also take place over a longer period of time. So some people want to have coaching every month for 3 or 4 months before a process. So on the run up to a process, they're actively paying attention to their learning and their development in an intensive period of time. And really, I suppose that's all you're doing with the exam to qualify for Sergeant Inspector, is you're committing to a process, a timed process, to study and prepare for the exam, and you probably forget half of it. In all honesty, you probably forget it in all honesty. However, you need to get to that point where you're able to remember and recall it. And so remembering and recalling is one thing, but actually if you understand what you already do, rather than just having to remember it, you get away from this thing around you have to remember loads of information to get through a promotion board. You don't. You just have to understand what it is you do and what you will do, and share that with a promotion panel, together with some of your values and insights around who you are, and try and strike the balance about being congruent or authentic with that. Because a promotion board should essentially, just like coaching, if you do it right, if you're prepared right and you match fit, it should relatively just be a conversation. It's a conversation that's set up. You've got a panel of 3 people. It's a date, and you're going to walk in and sit down, and they're going to ask you some questions. that's going to take them very little amount of time, and the rest of the 6, 7, 8, 9 minutes is yours to respond. So if you're prepared for that, that's where coaching can help, so that you are someone who's able to continue talking through that 9 minutes, and it's not enough for you, rather than you're finished and done in 2 minutes and worrying about trying to fill the space. So that's where the difference can come in with what coaching is. And it's perfectly natural to be uncertain and skeptical about coaching. I accept that, and people are quite honest when they say to me, really, Steve, I'm trying you, or I've contacted you as a last resort. And I'm perfectly happy to be contacted on that basis as a last resort. And you'll see lots of people in testimonials that did that and smashed their boards afterwards. So what is it that coaching unlocks for people? What is it? And I believe it's just a different way of looking at things. It helps you see different perspectives. So there's no rocket science in any of that. I'm talking about asking you questions, open questions that you would recognise as officers. So who, what, when, where, why, how. I always tend to add others onto that, or at least one other element to that. And you'll recognise the same techniques that coaches use. So that's what coaching is, or how it's described, and I've described what coaches do. I think it's important for you to think about whether you're going to do it for promotion or not. But to think about, so many forces have got coaches, and it's quite interesting to see how that plays out, because some people have got qualified coaches who work as cops, and they can coach people through certain activities. And I'm also noticing that professional development units, so probationer training or student training officer units, if you like, are now, some of them, being referred to as coaching units, and for the tutor constables to be referred as coaches. And in a way, that's good that you that language is being taken on, that those concepts are being introduced and embedded. I don't know any detail around it, but it's a change. It's a favourable change, I think, from previously. And it's a very nice thing to think about, tutor constables asking questions. So, you've identified 5 lines of inquiry there on this crime. That's brilliant. Can you think of any others? That's good coaching, because the individual's then racking their brains and the grey matter's going, the cogs are turning, they're actually thinking for themselves. And then a coach can step in and say, okay, would you like a suggestion? Here's a suggestion. What about this one? And that may trigger some other memories that they actually do know a couple of other lines of inquiry. So it's very much a process around thinking, supporting, and helping people to see things from different perspectives. And it takes time, and it beats a different approach, rather than someone saying, oh, you've only thought of 5 lines of inquiry there, there's at least another 4, get your pen, write these down. So it's very much more a supportive approach to helping people grow and to learn and to develop and to maximise their own potential, if you like. So thinking about coaching to set your goals is good, and having a coach support you, whoever that is, in whatever context, to reach your achievement. They can do that. That's what coaches do. It gives people the tools, the mental tools and dexterity and thinking to succeed. And the underlying kind of interaction or intent of every coaching experience is to build self-belief and to encourage responsibility to get the job done, because that's your responsibility essentially, is to get it done, to take the action necessary. So I just wanted to touch on one other thing before I talk about how people can think, and some of the language that I said I pick up on as a coach with candidates. So coaches can use different models. So if you go and get a book, or you just do a quick Google search, you'll find there's lots of coaching models you can use. Clear, Grow, and Grow is the one that most people recognise. So that's Golf Romeo Oscar Whiskey, and it stands for goal. So what is the goal that you're aiming for, that you want to achieve, that you aspire to? And I'm never going to assume and presume that someone's goal is their end goal, because they may be wanting to become a chief constable at some stage, and the next step to sergeant or inspector is their process goal. It's a step on the way. So I never assume and presume that, but generally I'm working with people who want to achieve the next step to progress their career to the next rank. So goal, we don't need to talk too much about that. It's the reason you're contacting me. It's the reason why you've downloaded a masterclass or a toolkit to help you move forward. So the goal bit in this context of promotion is generally, on most occasions, agreed almost implicitly, without covering it specifically or explicitly. So the next kind of stage on the model is reality. And that's just an honest conversation about where you are right now in terms of, being match fit, levels of understanding, knowledge of the role, evidence, examples, going through that. What's the reality of your situation at the moment? How would you describe that? How would you share that with me or with a coach? What does that look like? What does that sound like? What does that feel like? What's that reality for you? Because it's important, because we need to kind of think about it, or you might want to think about it and include it in your approach. And the next one is options. So the next part of the grow model is options, and what options are open to you. And that's a really important aspect of your consideration when you're using that model of moving forward. What are the options you can choose or discount to help you move forward? So you may choose to have a coach. You may choose not to use coaching. They're both decisions, and you'll have some thinking around that. You may choose to download every policy in your force from your computer system or your library, if you like. And I know some people have done that, and it's utterly useless to do that. But they do it in the right, honest held belief that the answers are in there somewhere. And so you can hear me laughing to myself, because people actually do those things. They download all their false policies on everything you can shake a stick at. And all it is a paperweight, a waste of paper. So it's not the right approach. So, but it is part of, it is an option for you. Another option would be, what if somebody's already prepared everything you need to go right now, and you can download that, watch it, listen to it, and get stuck in straight away to it. Well, again, I've already done that for you, and I've alluded to those products and resources, which are all available on my site. There are free resources on there, so free YouTube videos, free guides, and that they're all options for you. Some people avail themselves of all of those options and coaching one-to-one afterwards, and others just use all the free resources. And the reason I do that is because I've been where you are before, and it just helps sometimes to be able to start thinking properly and to start gaining some meaningful momentum. And so those free resources are, if you like, I suppose it's like for you to go and have a look at some of them. If you're in a rush, it can be quite difficult. It's like trying to pick up a 50-piece jigsaw, and you end up finding out you're missing 7 or 8, 9, 10 pieces, so you haven't quite got the whole picture, if I use that analogy. Whereas if you have a determined, planned, considered approach, and you allow yourself some time to prepare ahead of the curve, you can make a wise decision around which options you include as part of your preparation. And they may or may not include the ones I've talked about, or coaching at all, because there are people that walk amongst us, few and far between, but they weirdly to some of us, or understandably, because they're either really clever individuals and they set themselves apart in lots of other ways. There are people who are capable of just walking straight in, or maybe they're already working on something that's hot off the press, some big force project. The point being is, options, they'll still consider options, and that's part of one of the models, part of the model, the grow model. And then the W, the whiskey bit at the end of the model, the grow model, is will. And as I alluded to earlier on, that essentially ends, of all the things we've talked about, of all the conversation we've had, of all the thoughts that we've been through together, all the evidence, all the examples, what will you do? What will you do? Because if you walk away and you leave that, or you don't do anything, then that's the end of it. It's metaphorically, physically, in reality, that's the end of it if you don't take action. So The grow model is one model. As I said, there's lots of other models. I don't get too hung up about models, really. It's very much a bespoke approach with the individual, and I wouldn't insult anyone's intelligence by just working through a model that most people are aware of when it comes to coaching. We can find out just by scratching the surface. It's very much a bespoke approach, and there are other models. Good coaches have a choice of lots and lots of models that they can bring and apply to encourage discussion and to kind of, maximise potential of individuals. So the grow model is one of the tools that coaches can use to help you succeed. Now, one of the things I wanted to talk about was the language that some people use. And I have alluded to this, I think, on a couple of the YouTube videos that I've done, where a coach picks up on people's language. So if someone says, I'm not really confident about that, I might say, well, tell me a little bit more. What do you mean by that? What's behind that? Because it's important to have those conversations, get it out. But when I hear some people say, I've got fog and confusion in my head, I get it. I absolutely do get it. I know. I work with enough people to know exactly what that means. And particularly, when people say they've got a lot of noise in their head ahead of a promotion process, it's because they're firing on all cylinders. They're mentally wired, and you need a break from it. And one of the best ways to do that, incidentally, as I alluded to in one of my videos, is to go and watch a action film. You don't want a rom-com or a really good a film that makes you really think. You want an action movie so that you can escape the world, escape your head for 2 hours. And when you do that, you stop thinking about it. And all those thoughts go to your part of your brain where you can recall them from. And your brain just almost breathes a big sigh of relief. And when you return to the world, all that noise will flood straight back in. So people often say, look, I've got fog and confusion. I'm hoping that just before a board it isn't fog and confusion. It's more like, I really want to get all this stuff in order and get across what I want to get across to the board. But early on, people will say, look, I've got fog and confusion. Now, I'll pick up on that. We can unravel that and we can kind of drill down into it and see what they mean. But what's really behind that? Because what they're talking about is a level of unpreparedness that can be worked with, and we can get you match fit with that. There's certainly an improved position from there. Fog and confusion is often used either together or demystifying, or the mystification around promotion processes is not unusual either. Monsters in my head, that's one of the more dramatic bits of language that people have said, and that's not uncommon. Language like that. Monsters in my head. So I'll say, well, what do you mean by that? What does that mean? Could you just explain it? Let's get to the bottom of that. And we work out that actually, just like research shows, people have already got shot ahead to the interview stage. And as research with interviews show, I think it's about something like 76% of people are terrified that when they go in their promotion board, they'll dry up. There'll be an awkward silence, that the world will open up and they'll want the floor to swallow them. But they've already shot ahead there in their head to that stage without relaxing, thinking about where they are now and the fact that there's actually time ahead to completely change that stance and that position. So monsters in my head is a dramatic way of saying, I'm actually terrified of the process, of the uncertainty of not knowing, and that's okay. It's just part of people's approach. The great honesty around coaching that I love is when people feel that they can share that kind of thinking, that kind of effect with me, because when they can, we can get to work on that. That's good. And coaching is very much around supporting people. Coaching is not counselling. That's very much around looking at issues that have happened in the past and for professional counsellors to do. So a trained coach will know that, they are coaching. They're not counselling. They're not psychological or psychiatrists. And that's all part of a professional coach's training as well. So when people say they've got monsters in their head and we unravel it, it's generally around language they've chosen to describe their worries, their fears, their concerns around, been in an interview, but it hasn't happened yet. That's the best thing about it. You can get to work on it. I feel like a rabbit in the headlights. So that's not unusual. I feel like a rabbit in the headlights. I feel this process is approaching like this great huge truck with its lights on, and I am just like, don't look at the lights, don't look at the lights. I am absolutely trapped in there, and I need to move. I know I need to move, I just don't know how to move. So they use that analogy, and I really pick up on that kind of language as a coach, and it really does signify what's going on inside people, and it does need translating, if you like, identifying and then translating, and then we can kind of dissipate it and start getting some traction on what's meaningful and thinking positive things, and that's generally around taking action. And someone else has said, I feel like I'm going to be put on trial for my life. And I laugh at these things while I'm saying it, and I shouldn't laugh, but people have. There are. I mean, that's just three or four. There are lots of others that I could talk about, but I'm just talking about how people actually describe what's manifesting in their head ahead of a promotion process, and I love the honesty around it. So I feel like I'm being put on trial for my life, and it can feel very much like that. And I think that's where a lot of the, not all, but I think that's where some of the resistance to the fact that forces use interviews to select people. But as when, justice is kind of seen to be done in court, you have to be in court. There's no way around if you're a witness or a defendant or something. You can't not be in court. The process needs you there. And so an interview, they want to be able to see you. They want to be able to speak with you. They want to be able to get some insights into how you think, how you make decisions, what kind of leader you are, what things are important to you. And an interview is the mechanism by which that happens. Now, there are arguments both for and against whether it's right, whether it discriminates against people, whether it's unfair. And, people might look at that emotional language, those emotional thoughts, and think, actually, if we're making people feel like they're on trial for their life, maybe we should do away with interviews. And some forces have done away with interviews. I can't remember off the top of my head which ones, but they definitely have. And not necessarily for those reasons, but probably more to keep looking for the Holy Grail, which is the perfect promotion system. But they'll find plenty of people who agree with that. But those same people don't like what replaces it. And when people go for assessment centres that involve psychometric tests and presentations and briefings, they're equally terrified by those as well. So there isn't a perfect process in place, but whatever the process is, and I've helped enough people or supported enough people through them now, coaching can help. So hopefully you've had some insights from me just sitting here on my boat sharing some food for thought with you around the value of coaching, some of the options that are available to you. Hopefully you'll think about coaching and consider it in its many forms if you haven't already. But more importantly, I just want to convey to you that it is a really helpful and meaningful option for you, or consideration for you if you really do want to get match fit and smash a promotion board. And by that I'm using successful officers' language, where they've succeeded often beyond their own honest expectations, because they're in touch with the issues that have been unravelled for them through coaching. They are aligned to the competencies, they're familiar with the framework, and they're, more importantly, confident about talking about it. And you can't be confident about talking about it if you haven't done the work. And I'll finish on the main point around coaching, which is, whether you call it the work or the thinking, it's about action. And if you take action once you've got your options, you will be moving forward towards maximising your potential, which is all you want to do on the day. Okay, so that's about coaching for coppers and sharing some of my insights with you, and I will be back with another podcast for you shortly. Until then, take care.